Blake, do you know when National Talk Like a Pirate Day is?
Aye, matey.
Welcome to the Church Gear Podcast, where we pull the tech director out of the booth and onto the stage to share the most outlandish stories and hidden wisdom from the tech trenches. And now, here are your hosts.
I'm your host, Blake Hodges, a man who is trying his best to avoid scurvy. And I'm here with my boss and captain of the ship, Toby Walters.
I think I'm going to make you walk the plank. Let's see how many pirate puns we can do this morning.
Oh, man. All right.
Are you fired?
Okay. This is not as
now
funny
I'm just
as...
tickling myself.
Well, all right then. Let's move on.
So National Talk Like a Pirate Day is September 19th. Did you actually look it up?
I did not.
Can we hold this episode for almost a year?
No, we cannot.
Dar. So I figured I have a pirate story, and I feel like people listen to us and thinking like, are they just making stuff up now? And no, like our lives are dumb enough that we just keep having more and more material.
I mean, look, I'm the guy who literally rode on that, what's it called, a wheelchair thing, motorized wheelchair through that wedding just so I could talk about it. So yeah, you got to look out for moments.
So I'm not intentionally creating podcast stories, but I'm just going through my history of
Existing.
malfeasance, dumbness. And I was reminded of when I was like early 20s and I was part of the like youth leadership at my church. So post youth group, me and my friends kind of thought to ourselves like, okay, how can we stay in youth group because we love it so much? And we're like, oh, we'll be leaders. And so during this era, there was a lot of just goofy times. So we would frequent, did you ever watch Saved by the Bell?
I didn't. I had a girlfriend for like a month, and I was going to have to watch it to date her, and then she broke up with me, so I never saw it.
There's a whole nother, there's a lot.
Let's not go deeper.
You're an onion. You know, there's
we gotta
too
keep
many
this,
stinky layers there.
Keep this going.
But we had this, like in sorry, I'm jumping to my version. In Saved by the Bell, they have the Max. It's the place they always go to hang out. It's their restaurant. It's their go-to place. And my friends and I, growing up, we had a place, and it was called Beef and Bun. Like it was a hamburger joint, like old school.
It's actually a great name.
I know. So it had been there for easily 50 years. And we would go on like Friday or Saturday nights and just get food and hang out. And this one time when we pulled up, somebody looked in the back of my car and they said, "Why do you have a pirate hat in your car?" I was like, oh, that was from that like youth skit that we did for youth group the other night. And I was like, give me that thing. And I put it on and we all go in and I just start talking like a pirate and ordering my food like a pirate.
They spit in your food so hard.
They would never
They
do
cleaned the
that.
floors with those buns.
So
Or hamburger bun.
So it became kind of this like little joke. And then the next time we went, I had the hat in my car again. And I was like, oh, time for the pirate guy again. And so this became like a running theme. And then my mom thought it was really funny. So she started...
Your mom thought something was funny?
Can you imagine that?
I can't.
So she started buying me pieces of pirate costumes. So eventually, like, I had a sash, and I had a sword, and then I had a parrot on my shoulder. And I started being known as the pirate guy. And my best friend told me, he's like, so one time I went in when you weren't with me, and they don't really know who I am because I'm not the pirate guy. And I asked them as I was ordering my food, like, hey, do you guys know that weird guy that dresses up like a pirate and comes in here? And they're like, oh, we hate that guy. He's so obnoxious.
Wow.
So it was, it's one of those things where you do it and you think you're hilarious. And then everybody else is like, oh my gosh, like this guy is an idiot. So
Toby, welcome to my life, man.
I know. So,
Beat you to it.
my summer is Blake as the pirate guy.
I can't believe I've never heard that one. I now expect you to dress up as a pirate for Halloween. You better do it.
Yeah, I mean,
year.
that was several years in a row.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, you know...
Yeah, what are you going to segue for this one?
Well, I was going to say, you know who is a pirate, going across the seas, living on the coast, is Aaron Padilla, the former production manager at Bayside Church, and now audio gun for hire, or I should say audio sword, to keep
There
with the
you
theme,
go.
for hire. Aaron, welcome to the show, and do you believe that Toby actually did that?
100%.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't doubt it
100%.
either.
I'm trying to find like a word that describes an audio guide that starts with S, so I can say swashbuckling.
Okay, that S.
Ah.
Edit that out, Russ.
What is that S?
Okay, Aaron, how confident do you feel on these lies?
Pretty confident.
Wow.
Well, I'll say this. The people who know me real well will figure it out real quick, but I'm pretty confident.
We should have brought in a ringer.
Look at how smug he is with that branded Bills hat and his black shirt. I mean, he just looks like if you cut a tech out of a tech magazine, like this.
I know.
This is the model tech.
We should have hidden Dave Roediger off to the side to just feed us the answers.
Oh, why didn't we ask
I
him?
know.
Okay.
All right. Well, we're
Here
not
we
that
go.
smart.
Too late now.
Number 1, traveled the world and played drums in an all-girl band.
How is it an all-girl band if he's in it?
And how old was he?
Yeah.
Number 2, because at some point in his life, that's really fun, and other times it's very problematic. Number 2, have seen the underworld of Walt Disney's Magic Kingdom.
There's an underworld?
Oh, Tobes, it gets deep.
Okay.
Number 3, oh my gosh, my outline just jumped on me. Number 3, got the opportunity to mix front of house for Justin Timberlake on a one-off.
JT? My boy.
His house is like 30 minutes from where we're at right now.
That's right.
Once recalled a console back to 0 in the middle of a show. That's got to be. I want that to be so true.
That sounds awful. Okay.
Number 5, experienced a Michelin-starred dinner and watched the light sparkle on the Eiffel Tower in Paris with Lee Fields.
That's really romantic.
That really is.
I mean, Lee and I had sushi one time and the sparkling lights of Sacramento.
Toby, you cannot even compare those.
Sacramento and Paris?
Yeah.
They're basically the same thing.
Okay. Number 6, had a show in Guatemala and the promoter didn't book the ticket until 15 minutes before boarding. Okay. Well, at least it wasn't the booker not booking the ticket until right then. Aaron, you really got me. I'm not sure on any of these. I don't have a single hunch.
Well, we
That's
have
great.
to. I'm going to guess that he did not play drums in an all-girl band. That seems like a what is it called when two things don't align?
Non sequitur does not follow.
Sure.
I am gonna man. If he mixed for Justin Timberlake, that's really cool. I'm just for the sake of time, I'm gonna go with you because that does seem really odd, and I also wonder if when the lie is put first or last, that makes me more drawn to it.
Okay.
So we're locking in on the all-girl band.
So you're just riding my coattails again.
Toby, welcome to your life now. Instead of you wearing a hat, you're now wearing me on your coattails. All right, Aaron.
All right, ready? So that is true. I did play drums in an all-girl band. What's not true, the lie is I did not mix for Justin Timberlake.
Oh, JT.
I really want to, though. So if anybody knows him or
Done.
knows any of the crew, I would love to do it.
I mean, Blake and I'll go to his house after this and just
We know where
Perfect.
he lives. I mean,
I'm down.
ish. I know the city he lives in.
I think I actually know the hill, but because
Okay.
I've heard a story about how he got his Wi-Fi.
I've heard that story too. Well, another
save
time.
it, save it.
Another time.
So Aaron, tell us about like playing an all-girl band. How old were you? How was it an all-girl band? Like, you have some secrets to tell us here. Like,
Yeah. So back in the, I guess it would be mid-2000s, there was this all-girl band, Christian group called Barlow Girl. I don't know if you guys ever heard of them.
I remember them. Yeah.
Yeah. So I toured with them for 5 years and 3 sisters out of Chicago. And I started initially with them just taking care of all their gear, backline, setting up, tearing down, whatever. Then they found out I could play drums. So the drummer, who was one of the sisters, sang lead on half the songs. So she's like, hey, I want to go down front and sing lead. Why don't you play drums for a couple of the songs during the set? Great. So I ended up doing backline and playing drums during a couple of the songs of the set.
that does sound stressful.
Did they make you wear a wig?
And did any
Did
of
not have to
them
wear a wig.
and you ever have a crush?
No.
No.
Well, not that I'm aware of. How about that?
Who doesn't have a crush on the drummer, though? I mean, come on.
Well, they do. Yeah, I mean, that's tough. Drummer or electric guitarist, because both look very epic.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So then tell us about the Michelin star dinner with Lee Fields, and was that a
Yeah.
date?
It was very romantic.
Was there a proposal at the end of the evening?
No proposal. I was single at the time, but he wasn't.
Hmm.
No, so we were looking at a STM rig, Nexo STM rig for one of the Bayside campuses at the time. And apparently it's cheaper to fly people out to Paris to go demo a rig in Paris, because that's where Nexo is, than it is to put a demo together in the United States. So Nexo flew us out, actually Nexo and the integrator we were working with at the time flew us out to Paris to go do a demo of the STM rig to make sure everything was good. And we had an extra day and hung out in Paris and went to a Michelin star dinner because Lee is a foodie. And he's like, I want a Michelin star dinner in Paris. So went and did that. And they were like, oh, look, there's the Eiffel Tower. Let's go walk over there. Well, I don't know if you guys have ever been to Paris, but the Eiffel Tower is huge. Like, it's massive. And so we're like, oh, it's just like 2 blocks down. It was actually like 3 miles away.
Oh my gosh.
So we ended up walking for like, I don't know, a couple hours, and we finally got to the Eiffel Tower.
I feel like this is a plot of like 50% of the romantic comedies that have ever been made.
That actually would be, no, that would legit be a great scene in one. Let's sell that to somebody.
We did walk around up the water canal, like after dinner. You see the gondolas going by.
I just cannot even with this story right now.
It was something.
Did your finance guy believe the lie that it was cheaper to go to Paris than to demo it in the States?
Hey, they didn't pay for it, so
Yeah, if Nexo and the integrators paying
Ready
for
for
it.
it.
Why
Oh.
not? Yeah, and the fun part is we appreciate that you guys did that, because the D&B rig that you replaced, we ended up purchasing like a decade later and have now
Oh, yeah,
repurposed
that's
to
right.
several different churches. So we really
Boom.
appreciate that romantic moment with you and Lee as well.
You didn't know we
No
were
problem.
on that date with you somehow lurking in the background.
In spirit.
years later.
Oh, goodness.
Okay, we need to ask about recalling a console to zero in the middle of a show.
Yeah, that was my worst nightmare. I
And
have a
do you
nervous tick
still
now
have a
because of
heart
it.
condition from it?
Yeah, 100%.
So
100%.
what was
Yeah.
the show?
It was a festival in, where were we? I think it was in Illinois somewhere.
From Paris to Illinois.
Yep. Like backwoods of Illinois. It wasn't even like Chicago. Yeah, middle of the set, we're rocking. I'm on like an M7, and I guess the safety feature of the hit OK when you hit recall to confirm wasn't on. And I was doing something, I hit recall, and all the faders just go boosh back down to zero, like everything. And the band looks over at me and just like freaks out. It was with Barlow Girl. And I'm like, panic moment. I was like, oh no, what did I just do?
And
So I quickly try to start putting all their mixes back together.
And there's no undo button where you can.
Oh, there's definitely no undo button. Like I
Aw.
literally, like I had not saved it yet. It was one of those like throw and go festivals. Like we had no sound check. It was literally just start pushing faders. I had not saved. I've not did anything yet. And we had probably 3 songs left in the set.
Oh my gosh. So then how did it go by your assessment? Like how many people noticed other than you, obviously?
Well, me and the band noticed. I don't think anybody else noticed
Did you
because
get
they all pulled out an ear real quick. And,
So this was the monitor mix.
oh yeah, this is monitors.
Oh, okay. So the audience isn't going to hear it, but the band is all of a sudden like freaking out, like, okay,
Yeah.
what just happened?
Luckily they were all still using real amps and everything, so it wasn't like everything was direct as like now, where it's like I can't hear anything anymore.
And this
So
is
they all just
actually
pulled out an ear.
our second M7 disaster story. On an earlier episode, Boggs was doing front of house, and the M7 just died, like the computer crashed. And luckily, the production company had another one as a backup, but he said it was a tense, 20 minutes of repatching everything.
Oh yeah, I had that happen too I wasn't me. I was with, you guys know Daniel Ellis, mixes for We the Kingdom now, used to mix for Jesus Culture.
Yeah.
We were out in a show in Canada one time, and we had done sound check, everything was fine. It's like 2 minutes before the show, and he texts me. I'm at monitors, he's up front of the house. We're with Jesus Culture. He texts me, he's like, my console died.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
like, great. He's like, my console won't come back up. He's like, it's totally crashed. And all that's left up front of house is the production console, which is like a 16-channel Behringer. He's like, can you throw a mix together real quick, and we'll just patch it to the production console, and that'll just be the front of house mix. I was like, so you want me to mix front of house and everybody's monitors from monitors? He's like, yeah. I was like, okay. So I mixed an hour and a half set from monitors both front of house and monitors.
That's amazing. How did it go?
From what I hear, great. I had my ears in the whole time, so.
Wow.
That's like a superstar audio engineer, somebody that can pull that off.
Yeah, I mean, I hear the only people that can pull that off is Aaron Padilla,
Padilla.
and Jet.
We practiced this,
Man.
Blake.
Pronunciation. Okay. So did you get in trouble with Barlow Girl after all that stuff like went out for those last 3 songs?
No, it was just like, what happened? I was like, I don't know.
That's what I tell Toby anytime something doesn't work.
Well, now the truth comes out in
You got
public.
me. No,
Barlow
what
Girl
happened?
listens
I was
every
like,
week too. So
I was like, I'm dumb. I hit the recall button and never saved.
So
They're like, oh. So, no, but now I have a nervous tick. Like you'll literally see me after I make any change on a console, like the smallest fader movement. I always hit save or update or depending on what console, save snapshot or update snapshot or.
well,
It's
we had a
literally a
guest
nervous
recently
tick now.
also who had a nervous tick. Like he was so scared he was going to mess something up that messed it up twice. So be careful. So your show in Guatemala, the promoter, was that the person? Was he like not booking the ticket for himself until 15 minutes before boarding?
No,
Or did he
like
not
for
book
me to fly out to do the show.
you? What?
For me to fly out to do the show. So he had booked us to go to do the show in Guatemala. And he was a little bit of a shady dude. So the band's already there.
Was he wearing a
This is a
pirate
bar-
hat?
He might be. It was funny because he lived in California, like probably 10 minutes away from me, but he loved doing these shows in South America. So he booked us to go do the show in South America. Band was already down there. I'm still waiting. Like they told me like, oh yeah, you'll be on this flight on this day. I was like, okay, great. I didn't receive a confirmation at all, but that's what they told me it'll be. I show up to the airport. I go to check in. This was like way before phone apps and all that stuff where you could check and all that. It's kind of like just kind of blind leading the blind. And I show up and check in. She's like, yeah, I don't have a flight for you. I was like, what? Like, yeah, nothing. I was like, crap. So I called manager. I was like, hey, there's no flight for me. He's like, oh my gosh. He's like, let me call the promoter. So he's literally on the phone with the promoter. And like an hour goes by. I'm like, oh crap, I'm not getting on this flight. This is like, I'm going to Guatemala. Like there's only one flight. If I don't take this flight, I'm not making the show. Like it's not happening. And gets on the phone. And it's like 20 minutes down to like boarding time. Like they're almost about to board the plane. And I'm on the phone with him and he's in Guatemala. And the lady goes, oh, it just popped up right now. She's like, here, take the ticket, run upstairs, go through security. You should be able to make the plane. This is literally like the last second. And then I fly down there. And then I come to find out at the end when we all get back home and stuff like that, the promoter never paid the band and still hasn't till this day.
Oh man. I feel like we need to title this episode like audio engineers survive extremely like high stress situations.
Yeah, that's awful and sad.
Like my skin is crawling just thinking about trying to make this flight to get down to this festival in Guatemala.
Yeah, it was insane. So needless to say, we never worked with them again.
I can imagine.
Yeah, he got fired. All right, so now that we've heard about your heart attacks, let's hear about your background a little bit. How'd you get what a lot of people in the production space would consider like a high-level role at Bayside? And you're chilling with Lincoln Brewster. Like, what experiences led up to that?
A lot of those heart attacks.
And learning how to manage them.
Exactly. And troubleshooting. No, I like my whole background in audio, like it's all church based. I grew up in the church, started doing audio like when I was 6 years old. So,
That might be a new record for the podcast.
I was going to say Alexa Ross was at 9, I think. How did you start doing it at 6?
Yeah, so this is back in the like 1990, so early 90s. The church I was a part of was a portable church, which was back in 1990. That was like a not heard of thing. Like portable church, what's that? We were like one of the first churches in America to like meet in a school, set up and tear down every week, that type of thing. So I'm 6 years old. So I don't know what caught my eye, but I was like, hey, can I help load the trailer after church and pull stuff out of the trailer and wrap up cables? They're like, yeah, sure. We'll take any help. So that progressed. I would stand in the back, watch the guy mix, and on a little 16 channel Yamaha, I can't remember what console it was, but kind of slowly progressed from there. And then church bought a building, and then I was the only guy small enough to fit underneath the stage to run wires underneath.
This is amazing.
So progressed, did sound in youth and children's church and all that stuff. And then progressed from there. I got my first job, kind of intern job at a church. Kind of just made my way up through the church ranks, I guess, if you want to call it. And then when I was about like 15, the church I was at, the main audio guy who was on staff, we were doing a Christmas production, and he was off in another room doing like overflow stuff. And the worship pastor was like, hey, we need somebody to mix for rehearsal for the main room. Can you come in and set everything up? I was like, yeah, sure. No problem. So I get in there, set everything up. They start rehearsing. I'm sitting out front of the house. And after that rehearsal, he's like, hey, do you want to run sound for the Christmas production? I was like, what do you mean? He's like, the main room. Like, do you want to run sound for like the Christmas production? I was like, I can do that? I was like, really, me? I was like, what about so-and-so? He's the main guy. He's like, no, you're doing great. You got it. I was like, I'm 15 years old. He's like, just do it. I was like, all right. So I did it. And that was kind of like my first big entry into mixing for kind of big productions and stuff like that. There was, I mean, at the time there was, I think, like 3,500 people attending the church, which was huge for me. Like I'd never been a part of anything that big.
Wow, doing the Christmas service as a 15-year-old, I mean, that's like the Super Bowl of church, and here you are, baby-faced and everything, just running sound. That's amazing.
Well, now that begs a good question, Blake. Is Christmas the Super Bowl or is Easter the Super Bowl?
Oh, this is a big debate. Sidebar now, Aaron, what do you think?
I don't know. Well, I would tend to say from a production standpoint, Christmas would be. I've seen more churches go out for production-wise at Christmas than they have for Easter.
Yeah, I mean, that was my assumption just from talking to people, but this will be great. We'll throw a poll up for that. Okay, so then take us forward some more. How did you end up at Bayside?
Yeah, so forward, let's say 7 years. I'm like 20 now. So I'm freelancing at that point, working for a local production company. And I get this gig to go do monitors for Rebecca St. James out in California somewhere. You guys know Ralph Rivera?
Yes.
Heard of him?
King and Country.
Yeah, for King and Country, yes. Met him. I gave him my contact information. I'm like, please call me. I'd love to work with you again, blah, blah, blah. Fast forward again, ended up doing a couple shows with Rebecca. Ended up going on tour for 5 years with Barlow Girl. Fast forward, meet a bunch of people while on tour. Now we get to Bayside. I've lived in California most of my life, or all of my life really, up until like 8 months ago. And I had met a guy on the road, a guy named Tony Franson, lighting guy, who way back in the day when I used to tour, did lights for Jeremy Camp, like way back in the day when he first started. So living in California, you've always heard of Bayside, Lincoln Brewster. They always do big things. So I was like, hey, I'm going to go check out their Christmas service. And that year they hired out Tony Franson to do lighting. So I'm like, I'm going to go see my buddy Tony. I'm going to go check out the Bayside service. It's going to be great. Watch the service. It's amazing. It's actually Lee Field's first Christmas at Bayside mixing. And after the show, go say what's up to Tony. We catch up and he's like, hey, what are you doing right now? Or what are you doing now? I'm like, oh, I'm still on the road, but looking to get off possibly. He's like, oh, I think they're looking for somebody at Bayside. He's like, looking for like a monitor engineer. I was like, oh, cool. He's like, let me introduce you to Lee Fields. I was like, okay. Meet Lee. Lee and then a guy named Brian Jenkins, who's was the tech director and now is the tech director again at Bayside. Met them. Me and Lee hit it off. We ended up knowing all the same people. He toured with Cutlass for years. I don't know how we never met, but because we used to tour with Cutlass all the time. And we go to lunch like 2 weeks later after all the Christmas craziness is over, hang out, talk. He's like, well, why don't you come mix for our college service during the week and we'll kind of test you out, see how you do. I was like, okay, cool. So I went and mixed for college. He's like, hey, Lincoln's on this next weekend. Why don't you come mix this weekend and you can meet Link and we'll kind of figure out how that goes. I was like, all right, sweet. So I came in the next weekend, mixed for Link. I walk up to Lincoln after sound check. I was like, hey, you need any changes? Like, how's it feel? He's like, nope, sounds great. Sounds like you've been doing this your whole life. I was like, sweet.
And you basically had starting at 6.
Right. So that's kind of how that started. And then from there, I was hired on probably like 3 weeks later, kind of as the full-time monitor guy.
That's awesome. I
Yeah.
feel like the moral of the story is all great moments in tech start with a romantic meal with Lee Fields.
Well, they all can be traced back. I was gonna
It
say,
seems like a running theme here.
I was gonna say, like, what if someone had told you on that first service at Bayside, hey, the guy who's doing the audio over there, you're gonna go on a romantic date and walk to the Eiffel Tower. It's like, what?
That was the job interview.
Oh my gosh.
So, we hear so many stories about just the production level at Bayside. They're kind of known for their touring level production quality. So, for you, what experiences did you learn and bring from the road that then translated to Bayside and able to help level up the production there?
Yeah. So the whole thing at the time was, let's make weekends the easiest thing we do, kind of low stress. We can just walk in and go. Right. So a lot of that came from the touring background. Lincoln's toured with Steve Perry for years and years. He knows what the touring world's like. You could literally walk in with a touring rig and have a complete setup done in a couple hours that would rival any church rig. Like, it'd be better in a couple hours for sure. So we're like, well, let's make this room touring style. That way we can turn on a dime and make things easy for us. So at the time we had the D&B rig that was installed, had carpet squares on the floor. So we put everything into road cases. We switched out the D&B rig for a Nexo S12 rig. We flew it on motors. We literally made everything touring style. All the cabling on stage was quick disconnects and multi-pin connections. And we could literally turn on a dime like probably 10 minutes before sound check. I had some weekends to where I had 2 setups going. I had a full band setup on rolling risers, and then I had a acoustic setup on rolling risers. And the worship leader could walk in and go, let's do an acoustic set this week. All right, give me 10 minutes. I'll roll those risers out, connect them real quick, and we're ready to go.
So it sounds like the tech team, you guys were able to create an environment for the creatives and the worship where they could get as creative as they want, and you guys could keep up and make it, top-notch production level and follow with it.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Yep.
What advice would you give to other churches to, have some of that flexibility? I know not every church has that option, like they have fixed installs, but what are some, tricks of the trade that they could do to just have more flexibility?
Totally. Yeah, I know every church. I mean, a lot of churches are getting very modern with their production gear. Like 10 years ago, half the churches out there didn't even have like digital consoles. I think everybody's coming in this new age now where everybody's got like this gear, but there's still churches out there that don't have it, right? But I think making it as easy for you as possible is huge. Like setting up your input lists where if you don't have a billion extra channels, at least have 1 or 2 extra channels where the worship leader or somebody can come in and go, hey, can we add an extra acoustic guitar this weekend, or a banjo or harmonica, or adding those things into your, what I call default weekend kind of list is, even though you might not use them every weekend, but maybe once or twice, but having them there relieves that stress of like, where am I going to get that extra input at? Where am I going to get that extra mix at? That and being cleanliness is huge, right? Having your cables organized, however you want to do that, whatever makes more sense to you. Having looms together, having power together, everything that you can think of to keep stuff organized and clean on stage so the creatives can come in and go, let's try this. Isn't going to cost the team another 30 minutes to set up. It can be done in a minute or 2 minutes or 5 minutes and relieve stress on the team, especially since 99% of the churches out there use volunteers, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. That's amazing that you're able to have the flexibility for the creativity and then also not have the stress on your team, because it sounds like y'all created a system that, really alleviated that. And I love when people can find solutions that are like, hey, this is a common problem. Let's figure it out instead of just being frustrated forever. So I'm sure y'all's relationships was better than the average tech worship team combo.
Yeah. And we, as far as the relationship too, between the tech and worship team, we considered ourselves one team.
See, that's
Right?
great.
It wasn't the production department and the worship department. We were just kind of the worship department together.
Would you attribute that to being so collaborative and what you just described?
100%. Yeah.
That's
It was, yeah, we were always, any meetings that we had for anything, we were all together. It wasn't separate. It just made for camaraderie. We always hung out together. It was amazing.
and that's awesome. And I mean, we don't hear of people like fighting with their worship leaders like a ton or stuff, but like we do hear of there's conflict, there's tense moments. It's how do we navigate this social situation? So that's great. Y'all can
Right.
avoid that. And I bet because of that was able to kind of give you, some of your longevity. We've noticed a lot of techs don't have that. And we're still trying to figure out how we can be a part of the solution for that. But often, like, churches can be a revolving door of burnout for tech directors. So how did you find longevity and stay in such a demanding role for so long?
Totally. I think a lot of it was the team itself, like having that camaraderie, like having a team where it wasn't just all about work, right? We hung outside of work. We went over to each other's houses. We all had kids around the same age. So we hung out with kids, went to the park, had barbecues. So I think that was a long part of it. And two, relieving those stressful situations, trying to get out of those during the week, like being prepared, what's going to cause us the least amount of stress going into a weekend service or a production or Christmas or Easter or a conference or any of that stuff. I think that stuff all leads into longevity at church. Also making stuff fun, having fun. I think you get a lot of churches or tech groups or whatever, and it's all about, let's just get the job done. Let's get in there. Let's make this happen, and forget to have the fun. And at the end of it, or like, I'm burnt out. I'm tired. We didn't do anything. Like, this was the most stressful time of my life. Right.
I think that's such a simple thing that we often forget, that keeping it fun, it's hard to come to work when it's not fun. It just becomes a drag. So speaking of fun, let's play a game, Blake.
Oh my gosh. I was going to hang on. I want to make a good point before you surprise me with this game. I love that because I think a lot of times in companies, we can be so focused on the mission that we can sacrifice culture. And I think culture is so ethereal, and it's like, what is it really? Well, do people trust each other? Do they like each other? People work much better together when they trust each other. And so those barbecues and hangouts are just as important, if not potentially, than rehearsal, because when there's trust, there's ease. So
Exactly.
I wanted to get that out before now. Apparently, we're about to be tortured. Toby, what's the surprise game?
Okay, so we're going to play audio quiz.
Okay, sure.
And the winner gets a mug that says World's Best Audio Engineer.
Well, you're going to have to follow up on that now. All right.
So, Aaron, do you feel like Blake's got a shot in this?
Possibly.
He's been doing audio since he was 6 years old.
What have you been doing since you were 6?
Not much.
Okay, question number 1. And Blake, how about if we give you like a 3-second head start every time?
Well, sure, but I get that already because
How
I'm
about
just
like
rude.
a 30-minute head start so
Well,
you can Google everything?
Yeah.
Okay. Question 1. What do you call the distance between sound waves?
A wavelength?
Oh my gosh, you got one
Wow.
right.
Oh, well, I did pay attention for the first class of physical science in college, and then I stopped doing the homework.
Yes, it is called wavelength.
Wow.
It's going to be funny when Aaron actually corrects me and he's like, actually, no, it's this. So I'm going to do my best, Aaron.
I'm not a systems tech. I'm just mixed, man.
Okay, question 2. What do the letters K, H, Z stand for?
Kilohertz.
I had that. I was just about to say it.
You didn't get your 3-second head start that time.
Man.
Okay, question 3. When do sound waves produce silence?
In the absence of them?
Nope. Aaron?
You got me. I never mix in silence. I don't know.
When they are 180 degrees out of phase.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Whatever.
That makes-
All right, keep going.
Whatever. Okay, question 4. What do the letters SPL stand for?
Sound pressure level.
Yep. Got it. Blake, you're losing.
Super proud Leviathan.
Okay, question 5. What type of processor is used to affect the frequency of an audio signal?
I don't know.
An equalizer?
Correct.
So
I would have-
Denzel Washington.
I would have also accepted EQ.
Okay.
Okay, next question. VU, the letters as in VU meter, stands for what?
Volume optimizer or volume upper?
You're half
No,
right.
it's voltage something, isn't it?
I believe it is
Or is it
volume
volume?
unit.
A volume unit? Oh, well, there you go.
Again, I could be wrong. If any of our listeners want to
Correct, Toby.
correct Toby on social,
I was
please
going
do.
to say, if you want to call Toby out on Instagram and tag us, I will repost you if you're calling Toby
please,
out.
please. Okay, next to last question. What type of processor would have settings such as ratio, attack, and release?
Compressor.
It is a compressor. That is correct. Okay, and the final question. This one's worth 10 points. So it's
Sure.
anybody's game, Blake.
Oh my gosh.
Anyone's game. Who is the greatest mix engineer of all time?
Lee Fields?
Mm,
Oh, wait a minute. No, it's Jeff Sandstrom. Well, that's a tough one.
Aaron, do you have an answer?
I've got lots of answers for that one.
Corey Edwards?
The correct answer is Jesus.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Have you
wow.
never been to Sunday school? So, because nobody got the last question, Aaron, you win. And you get the mug that I've promised you that I will perhaps deliver on someday.
I'm going to put on ClickUp that he's got to get that task done, and he's going to send you, bless you, he's going to send you that mug. Okay.
Looking
well,
forward to it.
Well, that was a disaster. So let's talk about another disaster. We heard a rumor that you had an insane load-in story from the Christmas of 2018. So give us the dirt.
Yeah, so actually it's the same story of 2017 and 2018.
It happened twice?
It happened twice.
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice. What did I do?
Yeah. It was wild. So for those 2 years, we moved our Christmas production to our adventure campus, or to the Ventured campus at Bayside, which is literally like 3 miles away from the main campus in Granite Bay, California. And we'd do something like 15 services, Christmas services or experiences or whatever you want to call them.
And that's why it's the Super Bowl.
Well, and over the course of what? Like a week?
Over the course of like
Two?
a week. Over the course of a week.
So you're
we'd
doing
do like 1 to 2. It progressed. So like the first couple of nights, first night would be like 1, and then it jumped to like the next night it'd do like 2 services, then it jumped to like 3 services. By the end, it'd be like the last 2 days would be like 4 services each day. And those were like starting at 4 p.m. The first service would start when it had jumped to the multiple services. So we'd get to the last day, and then Christmas 2017 and Christmas 2018, our executive leaders had the wild idea like, hey, we have a tradition where Christmas Eve services always happen on the main campus, not the campus that we're currently at. So on December 23rd, after the last service that night, we would literally load everything out overnight, transfer everything over to the main campus, set everything back up, and do Christmas Eve at the main campus.
Wait a minute. What? I don't get it.
So,
That's what Blake usually says to things.
Well, but hang on. So
Yeah.
like why did you have to switch campuses?
because it was tradition, we would always have Christmas Eve production services at the main campus.
Did you
So we
know
did
this
since
ahead of
Bayside started.
time, or was this just a last minute like,
The
oh,
f-
by the way?
The first year, 2017, we found out about it a week before load-in.
How did the team handle that emotionally?
How many of the team quit?
It was, it was nuts. So like the first year that happened, 2017, it was the trucks had already left the production warehouse that we were renting everything from. And we had to call them and go, hey, we're switching venues on you guys. Go to this address instead of the main campus address. Needless to say, the design for the first year was done for the main campus, not the big campus, not the 3,000 seat campus. So when we got into the room, the design looked like half the size. Because the main campus at Granite Bay is only 2,000 seats, but it's a real tight 2,000 seat. The Venture campus is 3,000 seats and looked like a small arena. So
this is wild.
we had to
I can't even wrap my head around
we had
that.
to bring in extra stuff to kind of blow it up a little bit more, but then do a full load out on December 23rd, pack it all back into the semis, take it 3 miles across the city, and set it all back up in the main campus room.
So you essentially
be ready for.
You literally couldn't do your job at Bayside if you didn't do touring style production setups.
Pretty much. Or you learned real quick.
Man, that is intense.
Yeah, and to make it even better, those 2 years, Christmas Eve, the first year Christmas Eve fell on a Sunday. So you have to do Sunday morning services, right? So the first year I left, we loaded out that campus, had to set the room up back up for normal Sunday morning services. I got home at 4 a.m., had to be back at church at 7 a.m. for sound check for normal Sunday morning services, and then leave the last service early to jump over to the main campus to do sound check for the Christmas Eve services.
So I feel like oftentimes we hear techs talk about the unreasonable requests that they get. And it's not, I truly don't believe that it's because the pastors are trying to create them. They just don't know, or at least I would hope they don't know. Is that to date the most what moment you've ever had of being asked to do something? I'm hoping your answer is yes, that you haven't endured more misery than that.
I think in the church world, that's probably the most. What? Well, I don't know. I've driven a car into the worship center before through the side doors.
On purpose?
Oh yeah, we gave away a car during one of the conferences.
What?
And nobody wanted to drive the car in through the double doors that literally had I'm talking not even an inch on each side of clearance. We've done some pretty crazy stuff, guys.
I feel like every episode, Blake, you and I are just flabbergasted at the things that techs are able to accomplish.
Yeah, I have to pick up my jaw off the ground. I think tech should run the world. All elected officials should be former church techs, and it'll work because they all burn out by 30, and then.
And I think the moment that person said, "Don't you have somebody that works at your company that's get paid to do nothing?" I think it was really just perspective.
Oh, totally.
Based on what he does as a church tech, and then what you do as
whatever I do.
What do you do?
That's. Man, Aaron, that is intense. Real quick, how long did you work in church before you left total?
Yeah, so I was at Bayside for 11 years.
Okay. So,
which is pretty long for a tech person at church.
Well, I was going to say, and then you basically sounds like you've been serving in church since you were 6, so just about a whole lifetime.
Yeah.
Well, man, we wrap all our episodes up with a tech takeaway, which is essentially some piece of advice, whether it be technical, philosophical, whatever, on hey, if you're a church tech, this will help you out every week. These tend to be, the more quirky or random it is, actually the better, because, every tech's got their checklist. So what would be a tech takeaway from Aaron Padilla to...
You got it right.
It only took the whole episode.
I know.
Wow, nice. To wrap us up here.
All right, tech takeaway. This one is kind of quirky. Always have food available.
Ooh.
You don't want a hangry tech.
And does that include yourself and your team?
And Lee Fields?
That includes all of the above.
What if the tech takeaway was go to a restaurant with Lee Fields? It seems like that's the answer.
I was going to say, are you door dashing food from Paris every Sunday?
So what was some of your go-to for your techs? What would you feed your techs if all things were equal?
The most common easy thing is pizza, right? Easiest, cheapest. But I think because of Lee Fields, all of our techs were kind of foodies as well. So every once in a while we'd order in sushi, or we would get, oh man, there's this awesome Mexican restaurant called Zocalo in town. They're a fusion Mexican type place. A little on the nicer side, we'd order in that. Breakfast foods for when we had conferences, sandwiches, breakfast burritos, all of the above. Just having food and drinks on hand while people are working or serving or anything like that. Just it brings up the mood, brings up the morale. I don't know what it is. People just like full stomachs or what, but
You were eating
just elevates
sushi,
everything.
like first service of the day, just pounding sushi for breakfast.
Not like first service, maybe by lunch.
Okay.
It was definitely like a given. It was almost tradition. Last service of the Christmas production, we'd bring in sushi for everybody, for the whole team. That was a big morale booster. Everybody was waiting for it.
At Bayside, we move everything at Christmas and we have sushi. What a good tradition. Well, Aaron,
Should try it.
we really appreciate you coming on, man. What do you want to plug now that you're a gun or sword for hire?
Brandonville hats. Want to plug them?
LOL.
I would love a sponsorship.
Well, you said your buddy started it, or your buddy's buddy.
No, my buddy's buddy started it.
We
Yeah,
can
that's
make
like
that
a friend
happen.
of a friend. That's not like my direct friend.
I mean, it's his direct friend,
I'm
but
pretty sure Brandon Bills listens to our podcasts and, often makes, branding decisions based on what we say.
totally. Anything
100%.
else, or are you good?
I'm good. I'm like you said, I'm a tech for hire. So if your church needs PA tuning or training or whatever, hit me up.
All right, yeah, just reach out
Slide in,
to him.
slide in the DMs.
I was gonna say I'll link to his Instagram. All right, well, thanks for coming on, man.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for listening. And hey, congratulations on surviving Sunday. If you happen to make it through next Sunday as well, join us again for your weekly Tech Breather.
Blake, I feel like you have higher expectations now of working at Church Gear. Like you are expecting me to bring in fancy food to keep you fed and happy.
I mean, Toby, I'm only 25 pounds up. I'd really like to hit 50. So yeah, I'd like some sushi brought in often.
I mean, if we can't provide sushi for our podcast listeners, is there something that we can provide for them?
You know what's better than sushi, honestly, is the discount code podcast, which will get you 11% off anything on Church Gear, even if it's like 10 grand.
Well, do we sell sushi on Church Gear?
Ooh, maybe we should look into that.